if South Africans are not ready to expropriate the land because they are scared of sanctions, they are scared of backlash, then don't vote for the EFF. Because you vote for us, we are going to expropriate land. And Donald Trump will come for us. And Britain will come for us. And the EU will come for us. I said, and I said this throughout my life in the movement, that for everything good comes the pain before. If you're not prepared, South Africa, to take the pain, then forget about the land. Donald Trump has not said anything extreme. Things are still going to come. I hope the Zuma group in the ANC, which is supporting this thing, they know the consequences. We know the consequences.
Hello family, it's African Esquire. Welcome to the Federation of African Liberation. Before I get started on today's subject, I want to say that the Human Rights blog will be publishing an article. I will be publishing an article on the Human Rights blog of FAL, and that will be coming up probably on Friday. And the subject of the article are the rights of African people when it comes to government seizures of African property. In particularly, I'll be analyzing, giving a legal analysis of a situation that happened in Kenya where there were Nairobi residents who were living in a slum, and a U.S. company, Betchel, ended up being contracted by the Kenyan government, and the result was over 30,000 people lost their homes to demolition. So I'll be giving my analysis on what are the rights of indigenous people inside of these types of situations. So watch out for that Friday. Also, if you're watching on African Esquire on YouTube or on Black Junction TV, on Saturday I'm going to be doing a live stream called Revolution Live, and this is going to be at 8 p.m. The live stream will feature Nation State of Mind and also Son of Malcolm, both of whom are Pan-Africanist activists, and you might also follow them on Twitter. They are very active on Twitter as far as giving Pan-African analysis of different situations. So please be aware that this will be happening this Saturday. The subject I'm going to talk about today is what is happening in South Africa, but more particularly the U.S. response to what is happening in South Africa. So if you have not known, since apartheid, since white colonizers decided to go into South Africa and essentially overrun any type of civilization or overrun any type of nationhood that was already present there, since that time, white people have had a monopoly on the ownership of land. Because of this, even after apartheid ended, and because Nelson Mandela decided that he would compromise and not call for a total redistribution of the land to the people of South Africa, because of this, a very small percent of the South African population who is white has owned 80% of the land. And when I say small percent, I mean less than 10% of the South African population is white. The rest are, for the most part, black, and yet these black people are not spread out evenly. Many of them are congested inside of townships, so they have poor living conditions. They don't have enough land to even live off of or have human decency, because they are being basically put inside of a place where they do not have control of their own land that their ancestors originally controlled. So here we are today. It is 2018. It's been 20 years since apartheid, and still we have the same situation. The land has still not been redistributed. However, because of the EFF and Julius Malema, who has been pushing that the South African government, instead of continuing this process, actually put a constitutional amendment into the Constitution to say that we're going to redistribute land so that the people who were originally here, the people whose land this rightfully belongs to, will have land to actually live off of. So instead of having these 10% of the population own 80% of the lands, we're going to redistribute land and be fair. And they're not even trying to kick the white people out. They're just trying to say, hey, we're going to do this right and we're going to be fair about it. Now, this should not be controversial to me. This should not be controversial because the land in South Africa was stolen. And to me, if I steal something from someone, that does not make it mine. To me, if I steal your home, I say, you can no longer stay here. This is my house now. And 20 years from now, my child inherits your home from me. It doesn't matter that they had nothing to do with the fact that I stole your home. They are still illegal on that land. That was not their land. That was not their home. That is not what they have rightful ownership to. So therefore, it's common sense in property rights law, at least, that you can't say that this is mine because, you know, my children had nothing to do with it. No, the bottom line is it was the land was seized illegally from the person who actually had it originally. And this is essentially what has been happening in South Africa. For some reason, a lot of white commentators, a lot of white pundits, particularly we're going to talk about Tucker Carlson in a moment, but they feel that, hey, no, it's wrong. We seized the land and now it's ours. Now, understand that the American capitalist system, they have rules of law as far as property. But for some reason, when it comes to black people, the rules of law as far as property and ownership and what can be inherited and passed down, they forget all of that and they say, hey, we took it and therefore it's us. It's ours. And that is what has happened in this situation. So what you had is originally, I'm going to play a video from Tucker Carlson. He is a Fox News pundit, if you do not know. And he basically put out a little news clip where he's crying, you know, these tears of desperation because unfortunately the black South Africans want their land back from these people who seized their land illegally in a bloody war of apartheid that lasted so long that they can't even figure out what belongs to who. Well, because of this, Tucker Carlson released this video.
We've got an exclusive investigation for you tonight. The president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, has begun, and you may have seen this in the press, seizing land from his own citizens without compensation because they are the wrong skin color. That is literally the definition of racism. Racism is what our elites say they dislike most. Donald Trump is a racist, they say. But they paid no attention to this at all. In fact, Ramaphosa is one of Barack Obama's favorite leaders in the world. In a speech just a few weeks ago, Obama praised him. He praised the racist government of South Africa and Ramaphosa by name for, quote, inspiring hope throughout the country. Does our current bureaucratic elite agree with that? Apparently they do. We called over to the State Department for comment on South Africa's land seizures which should be getting worldwide attention because they are immoral but are getting basically none. And the State Department replied with what is, honestly, an unbelievable statement. We're going to quote it for you at length. Here it is, quote, "We are aware of these reports and have been following this issue very closely for some time. South Africa is a strong democracy with resilient institutions, including a free press and an independent judiciary. South Africans are grappling with the difficult issue of land reform through an open process, including public hearings, broad-based consultations, and active civil society engagement. President Ramaphosa has pledged that the land reform process will follow the rule of law and its implementation will not adversely affect economic growth, agricultural production, or food security." End quote. State Department did not mention that by following the rule of law, he has changed the country's constitution to make it possible to steal land from people because they are the wrong skin color. In other words, nothing to see here, says Mike Pompeo's State Department. It's totally okay for South Africa to steal property for racist reasons because they are, quote, a strong democracy and held, quote, public hearings. Criminals.
Now, let's just notice some things about him and his tone in the video. To him, he doesn't even give context to the fact that this is not land that was originally owned by the South African white farmers. So he wants to skip over that part of history. All he wants to do is skip to the present and say they have the land now, therefore it is their land. Now, the question is, why is it that whenever it comes to black people taking back what is theirs or doing something that might aggravate the power system, why is that such a threat to white supremacy? And the answer is because in the minds of the colonizer, as long as they have power, any type of action that you do to try to get that power back from them, that power is going to be labeled as terrorism. That power is going to be labeled as illegal. So notice, if the United States or if the European Union, if they want to overthrow a regime, It's fine to do that because they have the power to do so. If they want to say, if they want to seize land from Native Americans who lived here before the Americans ever touched it, or the white Americans ever touched this land, if they want to do that, it's fine because they had the power to do so. However, it's when those people who did not have the power, do not have the power, try to assert themselves and say, no, we want that power back. We want the land back. We want our rights back. We want to be in a position to where we can determine our own destiny and that we can even compete with you. That's whenever it becomes a threat, because it's a threat to the power system. So it's always important to remember that whenever you're hearing these people make these horrible, like, pity arguments, like, oh, well, we feel so bad because we're in this position, blah, blah, blah. Ask yourself, are they lamenting because of the people asking for something righteous, or are they asking because the powerless now want the power back? Because in their minds, whenever the powerless call for power back, that's anarchy. It's against the system of white supremacy. It's against the system of capitalism, and therefore they're going to react as though they're dealing with some type of atrocious human rights violation, although what they're doing by redistributing the land is actually going to save millions of lives. If you look at the conditions in the townships, if you look at the people who have been killed because of these conditions, not even just by health issues, but the intraracial violence between black South Africans has gone out off the law. If you actually look compared to other African nations, South Africa, very interestingly, has the highest murder rate whenever you don't consider things such as wars, or you don't consider things such as any type of war dispute or combat dispute. When you're just looking at intraracial violence that are non-related to war, South Africans actually have the highest rate in Africa. And that's a whole nother argument to go into, or a whole nother subject to go into. Why is it South Africa has the highest rate when they're supposed to be the most developed country? But if anything, that should have you thinking, well, maybe when they said most developed, they're not talking about most developed as far as the conscious mind or as far as real liberation, but they're thinking of most developed as far as white ability to capitalize off of the resources of those countries. So, of course, the reason why this clip gained more notoriety, or people are talking about this clip of Tucker Carlson, because really no one really cares that much about him. But the reason why it did get so much attention is because the President of the United States, Donald Trump, decided that he was so moved by the white tears on Tucker Carlson's face that I'm going to correct this issue, Tucker Carlson. I'm going to address what's going on in South Africa, and we're going to fix this. So Donald Trump says, and he tweets, and you know that's where we get most of our information about Donald Trump from. He says, I have asked Secretary of State Pompeo to closely study the South African land and farm seizures and expropriations in the large-scale killing of farmers. And he quotes, South African government is now seizing land from white farmers, and he adds Tucker Carlson, and he adds Fox News. The concerning thing, of course, is, why are you adding Tucker Carlson and Fox News? They're not the people who necessarily got you elected. Like, the idea of democracy, which is hardly ever carried out, is that you represent the people. So why are you doing favors for one news pundit? I don't know. We don't know why Trump does a lot of what he does. And by the way, I don't usually talk too much about Trump, or really too many U.S. presidents, period. I more so probably talked about Obama, actually, because I got so sick of people turning a blind eye to the things that he did wrong because of the color of his skin, or because they wanted to imagine him being. But the reason why I don't really talk too much about these politicians is because I never really am disillusioned about the position of the President of the United States. I'm not disillusioned about the office of the presidency of the United States. I understand that in order to be a good president, you really can't be a good president without being an imperialist. You can't be, and when I say good, I mean by their standards good. You can't be a good president without being willing to exploit people in order to preserve the economy, preserve the elite. So I never really have a high regard for presidents, and because of this, when I see Trump do things, when I see him say things, regardless if it's racist or not, I usually just don't pay mind to it, because I'm not disillusioned about what the president is supposed to be. If anything, at least we know what he's thinking, because most of them, i.e. like Obama or Clinton or Bush, they'll hide what they're thinking or hide what they want to do, and they'll say, oh, we really care about you people, but they'll do the opposite. So that's why I usually don't talk about him, but in this instance, I do want to talk about him. The reason is, when you look at the tweet, what you see is a lot of things in here. The one thing that you see that has been prevalent throughout history, the United States presidents, the leaders, still think that they're the world police. They still think that they have the right to monitor something that has absolutely nothing to do with them. And we have to be very clear. There's a lot of things going on in the world right now. If some of you have not known, Bobby Wine, who is a Ugandan politician, has just gotten released from jail after being beat by the military repeatedly. The Zimbabwe government, there's a lot of scrutiny going on. They just had an election, and it was the election rigged. I believe it was rigged by people who are being paid for by the Chinese government when you look at evidence. So I'm just making this point to say there's a lot going on in Africa if you want something to care about. There's a Cameroonian government where you have people, farmers, or the people who are being killed, the English-speaking people who are being killed by individuals in the Cameroonian government. There's so much going on. Congo is about to have an election. Is that election going to be legitimate? All of these things, of course, only affect African people. None of them are a threat to white supremacy. In fact, it might be argued that in a lot of these instances, these conflicts are being instigated by white supremacy. So you have to notice what what he's basically saying in his tweet is that I'm going to monitor. I won't monitor all these other things going on. I'm not going to monitor what's going on with the different corrupt regimes. I'm not going to monitor what's going on with the people being beat and killed by the military, with the fact that there was a number of people who were shot down by the Zimbabwe military after the election. I'm not going to monitor any of those things. I only care about white interests. And so, therefore, and Trump, hey, at least he lets you know what he's thinking, because I promise you it would have still been the case that the president would have had someone monitoring the situation in South Africa. If it was Obama or whoever, but Trump lets you know outright, I'm going to be having the Secretary of State monitor what's going on, not because it affects most people, not because it affects the majority of the population, but because it affects white interests. And why is it that he chose this situation that he wanted to comment on, or he felt so compelled to actually have monitored? The logical reason is because once this is done, and I do believe it's going to happen, once the South African government actually redistributes the land to the people who are actually there originally, this sets a precedent that could be followed potentially, and could potentially be against the interest of people like Trump, people who have gotten their riches by exploiting so many people. Because if once we start having precedents saying, hey, you have to give back what you took from us, then that is going to have a lot of people scared about people asking for their money back, people asking for their land back. Think about if the Native Americans use this as, the indigenous Americans use this as a reason that the United States should give them their land back. I mean, we know that they have certain types of land. They have some, they have the reservations, but a lot of that land is low quality. Of course, they used to own all of this, so it's not in proportion to what they should have. But I would imagine that, hey, if this goes through and it's successful, you're going to have a lot of people looking again at what happened inside of times of past. You're going to have people in the Philippines like, hey, you know, why are we annexed by the United States? I mean, why do they feel like they can have us? Why do they feel like they have a right to our land? So I understand why this is happening, because the fact is that there's so much at stake for the power structure. I understand why he would say it. And so it doesn't surprise me that Trump would say these things, or that he would feel threatened. And so the thing to understand is that he's reacting to being scared about losing his position as a white male in this world, his position of power. And once you start having more of us start asserting ourselves, asserting what should be ours as being our rights, then you're going to see a lot of backlash against the system that is threatened by us asserting for our political rights. So what I'm calling for, and as the part of the Federation of African Liberation, us throughout the diaspora, we need to be monitoring what's going on as far as what is Trump monitoring. So we need to be monitoring what's going on in South Africa. We need to be monitoring what the president says about South Africa, and we need to be very quick to speak out and against any type of interference inside of a sovereign nation asserting their own rights, of a sovereign nation asserting their rights, of sovereign people asserting their right to the land that they were actually their ancestral land. We need to be ready, paying attention to what's going on as far as that, because if the United States does do something, and I would never put it above Donald Trump to say, hey, we're going to invade South Africa and give the land back to the white farmers, I wouldn't have put it above him. And so since I wouldn't have put it above him to do that, we have to be ready to react, similar to how us throughout the diaspora, we reacted when Nelson Mandela was in prison, and we had such a profound impact on the power dynamics in that situation and the conversation changing, and ultimately Mandela got out because of the widespread attention that was being brought to the issue by people in the United States and people throughout the diaspora. So I'm calling for all of us to make sure that we are diligent in watching what's going on in South Africa, because the implications of what happens if it's successful could potentially change a whole, could be a paradigm shift as far as history, saying that people who were colonized and lost so much have a right to get back what was stolen from them. That could completely change the narrative of all of us throughout the diaspora. So that is all I have on this. I would love to hear your thoughts, and I will see you all in another video.